anyway, I decided to tell another story because I'm in a storytelling mood, and it kind of got me going there with the whole talk about the Texaco station and the laundromat and everything and the things that went on. Um, Now, at this Texaco station, I should explain a few things about that. What was going on there back in the mid '80s is Texaco Corporation was trying to take the franchise away from the two men who owned it. They were business partners, and they had invested in this thing together. Now, one of the men who owned it was a real straight arrow, honest as the day is long, complete above board kind of a guy, you know. But the other one was a crook, like a real bad crook. And really, he was connected with gangsters. He was connected with organized crime and everything else. There used to be high stakes poker games in the back room at night. And I remember one of the local cops, one of the Perth police, used to sit in on these games. And he'd have his patrol car parked around back, and he'd be sitting in there in the back room in his uniform. He'd have his police radio on the table, you know, the old police radio that was the size of a brick with the long antenna, you know, like, I don't know, the 20-foot high antenna or whatever it was. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. The thing had a whip antenna on it that extended several feet anyway, and it was the size of a brick, this thing, you know. And that would sit on a little bigger than a brick, really. And that thing would sit on the table, squawking away, you know, during the poker game. And I used to think, you know, if he has a good hand, is he really going to drop his cards and go on a call if he gets called out? You know, I doubt it. Anyway, there was a lot of stuff happening there. The guy who was connected with organized crime, he got mixed up in a big drug operation. He was involved in a scheme where they were smuggling cocaine from the United States into Canada inside of calcite-filled tractor tires. And for anybody who doesn't know, a calcite-filled tractor tire, basically calcite is a white powder that looks a lot like cocaine. And some tractor tires are filled with calcite instead of air. And there's a reason for that. I don't know exactly what it is, if it has to do with weight or if it has to do with something with puncture resistance or what. I really don't know. But there are tractor tires that are filled with calcite instead of air. At least there were back then. Maybe not now. I have no idea. But back then in the 1980s, there were at least. And anyway, they were smuggling cocaine across the border in these tires. And that fellow ended up in prison in the United States Federal Penitentiary in Colorado for a while because of his role in smuggling this stuff across the border. Anyway, because he was, you know, breaching U.S. customs, basically bringing this stuff across into Canada, and in Canada the penalties weren't that severe. So the Canadian authorities were perfectly happy to let U.S. authorities prosecute him, and he ended up in a federal penitentiary in Colorado for a while. And at that point, they did lose the franchise. But anyway, Texaco was trying to take the franchise away, so they were sending in secret shoppers, just citizens who were paid to go in and to find anything that was out of place or wrong or whatever. And there was plenty out of place and wrong around that place, I'll tell you. But I was hired to come in the odd Saturday night and basically push a broom around the parking lot, clean everything up. They had these concrete sculptures for sale in front of the place, and all made out of heavy concrete, you know. And people would graffiti them and stuff. I was paid to clean all that up. They had one big sculpture there. It was of a pig. It was a huge thing. It was of a pig. And people used to get a sanitary napkin, you know, like what a woman will wear when she has her period. And they'd put that between the legs of the pig. This is the sort of stuff that went on. So my job was to scrub the graffiti off and to make sure there were no sanitary napkins stuck to the pig. Push a broom around the parking lot, sweep up all the cigarette butts and all that stuff, clean the area up, make sure the garbage cans weren't overflowing and stuff like that. Anyway, when I would do that, usually maybe 2 Saturdays a month I would do that, my pay was $10 to do all that work. It would take about 3 hours to do the whole job. And I was also supposed to get my supper out of it, but I would never eat there because it was disgusting, and the cook in there was a dirty outfit. He'd be digging in his rear end and picking his nose, and he'd be sweating. The sweat would be dropping into the food and stuff. It was nasty. He was just a real pig, this guy. Anyway, his first name was Roger. I'm not going to say his last name, but for the sake so I can tell this story, his first name was Roger. 5 years later, when I was driving a taxi cab in Perth, so in 1990, I drove a taxi cab for a while, and I got called to the beer store. Now, for those who don't know, who don't live in Canada, in Ontario, Canada, there is no beer sold in grocery stores. That's not a thing here. The beer, if you want to buy beer, you have to actually go to what used to be called, when I was a kid, a brewer's retail store. Now it's just called the beer store. And what it is it's like a crown corporation, and alcohol sales are very tightly controlled, and you can't buy alcohol in grocery stores and things in Ontario. You have to go to these government type stores to buy alcohol. And if you want beer, you go to the beer store. If you want liquor, you go to when I was a kid, the beer store was called the Brewers, what was it, the Brewers Outlet Store, I think it was called, and the, something like that, the Brewers Retail Store, that's what it was called. Now it's called the beer store, and if you wanted liquor, like whiskey or wine or whatever, then you had to go to what was called the Liquor Control Board store, which is now just called the liquor store. But anyway, basically they're government-run things, and you can't buy alcohol in a grocery store or a corner store or whatever and they don't have privately run alcohol stores like liquor stores and stuff like they do in the United States. Anyway, I got dispatched to the beer store. I got the call over the Motorola radio in the car. I was dropping a guy off just a few blocks from the beer store. And so I went straight over to the beer store to pick this fellow up. I didn't know who it was. It turns out it was Roger, who was the former cook from the Texaco station. The guy that I wouldn't eat his food because he was disgusting. Anyway, there was a scam that some people would try to pull where they would say that you had kept them waiting for a long time and therefore they shouldn't have to pay the fare. Some people would try stuff like that. This is what he tried. He was cursing a blue streak when I got there, saying, "You kept me waiting. I was waiting here for over an hour for you." Well, I said to him, anyway, I said to him, well, I just came directly over here when I got the call. I said I was just a few blocks away. No, you kept me waiting, and now you owe me a free ride and all this. So I radioed back to dispatch. I said, "When did you get that call for the beer store?" And the girl told me, she said, well, just before I dispatched you. Like I literally hung up the phone and got on the radio and dispatched you. "Okay," I said, "so not an hour ago or more?" "No," she said, "heavens no." So I says to this Roger fella, I says, "You're a liar. You're trying to pull a scam, and I'm not having it, and you're going to pay the fare." Well, we got to his place, and he got out of the car. He said, "I will not pay the fare. You kept me waiting for over an hour." I said, "That's not true. You know it isn't true." He said, "Well, I'm not paying because you kept me waiting, and I'll get my beer out of the car," he said, "and get it upstairs for me to my apartment." Well, we did carry things for people in those days. We carried groceries up or parcels or whatever you had. But I wasn't going to do anything for this guy. He's running a scam on me. And so what I did is I opened the trunk of the car and I took the case of 24 bottles of beer out of the car, and I just let it go. I just dropped it on the pavement. And of course, you could hear the bottles break and all the suds and everything started to come out of the box. And I said, oops, like that. Well, he was mad. He cursed the blue streak and he threatened me and everything else. And I just said, oh, well, what can you do? Accidents happen, eh? What can you do? Anyway, I left him standing there with his busted up case of beer. And a few minutes later, I got a call from my boss on the radio, and he was mad. He said, did you just break Roger so-and-so's beer and all that? You just do that? You smash his beer up and all? I said, well, yes, I did. Well, why did you do that? What's wrong with you? Why would you do something like that? And I said, oh, he was trying to run a scam. He was saying that he was left waiting for an hour and on like that. And that wasn't true. He was just trying to get out of paying the fare. Well, as soon as my boss heard that, he said, oh, he was, eh? Well, in that case, F him. You did good. And that was the end of that anyway. I never heard any more about it. But, yeah, there were quite a bunch there anyway. Quite a bunch in my hometown. You never knew what you were going to be up against. People, I've seen people from Southern Ontario who have visited my hometown on Facebook. They'll comment and they'll say they call it Bastardville. That's what they call it. My hometown, they call it Bastardville. It's just known to be a place with a lot of really awful people. It's a really pretty town. And there are good people there. It's not like everybody's like that. But we seem to have had more than our share of those who were like that. Anyway, the fight that I got into at the Texaco station was an ex-boyfriend of my cousin who had beat her up. And I guess he found out that I was related to her and he wanted to smash my car up. And I wouldn't tell him which car was mine so he could smash it up. And that's why he put my head through the gas pump, anyway. So then the police came up and said that I had caused the fight. I had picked a fight with him by disrespecting him by not answering his question. So there you go, anyway. But that's what happened there. I found out later what the connection was, who this guy was, and everything. The funny thing is, the guy held a grudge against me for a long time. And again, when I was driving a cab, we were working out of a gas station. He came into the gas station drunk one night with his girlfriend wanting to fight me. And I knocked him out. I punched him in the throat and knocked him out. And I didn't think I would actually succeed in doing that. My idea was to keep him from breathing. Just because if you get punched in the throat, it'll keep you from breathing. And I was just going to work him over while he was disabled enough that he wouldn't be able to hurt